Thanks.
Y'all can applaud her. That's going to be okay. It's a tough crowd this morning. Is Gil still in here? No. Okay. I would like to publicly apologize to Gil. Wait, where's the tape? Publicly apologize to Gil. Yes. Oh, that's fine. We're starting a little early just for fun. Otherwise, y'all gonna fall asleep. It's okay. So last night, a number of the attendees and board members and planning committee members, etc., came to Billy Bob's because I told them 100,000 years ago it was my uncle's 70th birthday, and he's a very good dancer, and all he wanted to do was dance. And so a whole bunch of people showed up last night at Billy Bob's. For any of you who are like psychological compartmentalizers, any of you compartmentalizers? So last night, my whole life like exploded because I had a friend, my uncle, clients, board members, and audience members all hanging out at the table. It was very strange, but we all had a very good time. But back to Gil, I didn't recognize Gil from the conference. He was wearing a cowboy hat because he bought one at the gift shop. And so did Anne. They looked amazing, but I didn't recognize him. And so the group was kind of like gaggled around the table that I was sitting at. I don't dance, I just hold tables. And I actually asked someone, is he with this group or is he being a creeper? Because I felt very protective of the group and I didn't recognize him. So please feel free to call him a creeper. He was not, and he was very well behaved, but I do owe him an apology. I have been engaging in conversation with a lot of people since yesterday morning, and I gave you homework assignments to think about your own managerial boundaries. The idea of today was to be able to spend time with you, for you, on kind of, for lack of better words, how are you doing? And how can we apply what we talked about yesterday? And some of you may not have been here yesterday, but how can you apply having these conversations when you're burnt out, when you're exhausted, when things are uncertain, when you are managing someone or being managed? And so that's how I wanted to spend today. So part of the reason I probably scared Julia is I was back behind the curtain with Terrell. That does not sound good, but I was making a slide. So Terrell, if you can put up my slide. I made this slide. I feel like it's very me. You're welcome. Oh, but the white font doesn't show up very good. We didn't know what it was going to do. So I want to give you a survey. Part of the reason we're starting early is that if you're here early, you get the survey quicker. But it's Jess Pettitt. There's 4 T's in my last name. .com/survey. So while y'all are figuring out if you want to do this or getting your phone together or whatever, what I want to tell you, and I told you a little bit yesterday when I switched my work from being primarily external, kind of diversity, education, inclusion. We call it different things, but we never actually do the work. We were just kind of gathering vocabulary for a decade, at least I was. And I flipped it around to being much more personal work because it's ultimately, we are responsible for who and how we show up in the world. And so instead of it being external and gathering, I want to switch the work to be much more about who you are and how you are, on the possibility that there is a gap. And the gap is between how you think you are and how people actually interact with you or how they experience you. So I feel like my work and my research is kind of leaning now more towards that gap. So when I was doing this piece, and we talk about this at the beginning of the book, yesterday's keynote was kind of towards the end of the book, but at the beginning of the book, I come up with this kind of model, and this model is 3 different variables. They're very easy: head, heart, and action. So I'll explain the variables in depth, but if you are interested, you can go to Jess Pettitt. Oh, Terrell, you made it darker. Good job. So jesspettitt.com/survey, and you can take the survey. It's 13 questions that involve like food trucks and Dolly Parton, but it is statistically reliable because I'm a dork. So if you want to go to jesspettitt.com/survey and take the survey, I also encourage you to give your team this, give your family the survey. Because as we talk about the different variables, it'll make a little bit more sense when you can kind of diagnose how you are showing up in the moment. And notice that's the key part, because you can take the survey over and over and over and over and over again, and you may show up differently. You may show up similarly. It may change. It may not change, but ultimately you're responsible for this. So I'm just going to give y'all a couple of beats. If you would like, jesspettitt.com/survey. Fill out the survey, give it to people who aren't here, write it down. Again, give it to your team. But I'll just give those of you that are here, I'll just give you a little bit to complete the survey, and then I'll start talking about, oh, Gil's back. Gil, I apologized to you when you were not in the room. Yeah, last night I didn't recognize you because of your fancy hat maybe. And I had to ask somebody if you were a creeper or with the conference. So they said creeper, but then they said you were officially with the conference. So sorry about that. I just got protective of folks. Okay, as folks are coming in, you're just potentially doing the survey. That is the top link. I'm going to have some water. You may notice that I sound like I smoked a pack of cigarettes last night. I did not pack or smoke a pack of cigarettes. I just talked really loudly over very loud country music. I blame y'all, seriously. Terrell, that looks much better. Thank you very much. You can use whatever name you want. It doesn't actually link back to me in any way. So it doesn't subscribe you to something. I don't see your results and I don't see them connected to you in any way. Because I don't like spam. So I'd like to suggest some of you may be overthinking the survey questions, and that is probably indicative of how you also show up. That's fine. Just remember, this is about food trucks. So it's going to be okay. But I'm not just calling you out. There's a lot of people. I wish you could see everyone's face. Not everyone's face, but some of y'all are taking this very seriously. So just so you know, we're doing the top link is a little quick survey. It doesn't subscribe you to anything. It's not a trap. I really do have to specify that every time. Okay, some of you may still be doing it, and that is fine. Some of you may just be starting it. Some of you may not be interested in doing it at all. That is all totally good. I'll leave the links up there the whole time so you can jot it down, take a screenshot, etc. So as I talked about yesterday, switching my research or my approach to doing diversity work as external to internal, what I'm realizing now that I'm really interested in and my research will continue doing is between the gaps. And what I mean by the gap is that if we embrace the fact that we are responsible for who and how we are, so sometimes that sounds a lot easier than it truly is. So if we embrace we are responsible for who and how we are, there is often a gap between how we perceive ourselves and how other people's experience us. So I'm kind of niching even more my obsessive research lens. But what I want to invite you to do is to just take a second and kind of self-evaluate. How are you doing in this world today? How are you feeling? How crispy are you? Some of you aren't crispy. You're like kind of jelly, like you've lost a lot of structure. Some of you are burnt croutons. Some of y'all brand new. You're super excited. It's your first conference. So you're really excited about what it is you're getting to learn and meet people. So you kind of feel yourself kind of launching. All of those things can be true. When I did the research about oneself, I told you yesterday that I started listening to people differently. And what I started doing was listening to people's excuses and why they couldn't do something. And those excuses fell into a pattern. And as I was doing the research on the excuses, what eventually happened is I created this model. And this model involves 3 different variables: head, heart, and action. So what I want to do today is share with you basically really funny reasons that Todd is annoying, Barb is annoying, and spoiler alert, you are annoying. So if we can embrace why we are annoying, then maybe we can do something about it. That's my big plan. So let me go through the 3 different variables. I first also need to mention that this is not like a horoscope thing where like one is your sun and a rising moon and you prefer something else. All 3 variables are in all of us. But when we talked yesterday about making judgments and assumptions, your life has taught you how to show up. And when I talked about giving grace to other people, there's a moment, a beat that you can give a very annoying person. And that is their life taught them that this is how they're supposed to show up. You can say that in a pretty condescending way, right? Like their life taught them that this is appropriate. But the truth is that their life taught them that this is appropriate. Just like your life taught you that this is appropriate. So I want to spend today a little bit of time of that because I think that is at the root of any gap you may have around managerial boundaries, personal boundaries, professional boundaries, but also just self-care and how you're taking care of yourself. So 3 variables: head, heart, and action. I want to explain each variable first. And then what ends up happening is our life has taught us to use 2 at a time. So I'll go through the avatars of the 3 different combinations of using 2 different variables. Spoiler alert, the dangling one is where all your excuses come from. So when you start thinking about mentor relationships or supervisor or managerial ones, you need to pay attention to the dangling participle. All 3 variables need to be something you think about at the same time. If you did the survey, then there's a good chance that you got some kind of results that often just are one of the words. Sometimes you're real complicated, so you'll get 2 of the words. I don't know what they are. I have no way of checking, but I just want you to kind of notice what showed up for you on the survey. And it might be similar to what you think. It might be different to what you had thought. So in this particular case, this is really funny. And I'm sorry to do this because I had to do an interruption yesterday too. Do you mind turning off your flashlight on your cell phone? So it just triggers migraines. So thank you very much. Sorry. I don't know. Those and LED lights that are on like on new cars. This was not endorsed by a migraine association. Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Okay. So I know no one ever knows that it's on. So then that's why I had to say it. It's like your fly being down. It's important. I once had to tell, this is a claim to fame. I opened for Joe Biden once. So I'm backstage and I'm coming backstage and he's backstage with his Secret Service. And I had to kind of be like, excuse me. And none of the Secret Service people were listening to me. And so somehow I got like at him. You're not really supposed to be able to do that. But I had pink hair at the time. Maybe that's why. But anyway, so I got up to him and I was like, before you go out there, I just thought I'd let you know your fly is down. And he was like, oh, wow, thanks. Anyway, just serving my country one day at a time. Yeah. All right. Focus. Okay. So if you've done the survey, you're welcome to do that. So the three variables, I'm going to introduce the three variables, then we're going to talk about the combos. What your job is to notice when you're like, this is stupid, because it's probably not, okay? Because that thing is going to like back you out of doing this work. Okay, so first off, head, heart, and action. So head does not mean smart or intellectual, so some of you can relax. What it means is really detail oriented. So when you think about when you're in a situation where like maybe it's more stressful or it's more challenging, sometimes you or somebody else goes to this really specific finite detail and they're totally hung up on that and they can't get off that little detail. It's annoying, spoiler alert, okay? So if you're really, really detail oriented, then your heady variable might be what it gets deployed, specifically when you're thinking about challenge or like really difficult situations. Heady is very detailed. Hearty in this case does not mean emotions. According to my therapist, those are rational and appropriate. I'm still working on that. But what this means, the hearty part, is kind of like the flight of ideas. So it's really big concepts. Now, if you think about a really detail-oriented person and someone with a flight of ideas, they're going to look like they're miscommunicating. But they're actually responding and communicating to the same subject often. They just show up in very different ways. This is literally how I pay my mortgage. Because 90% of like the staff development or the consulting work that I do is between the detail-oriented people and the big idea people, because they think they hate each other. They actually might hate each other, but they're not miscommunicating. They're just not listening. So we were talking yesterday about when you're communicating with someone and they get super defensive, you can't change them, but you can pay attention to how you're showing up in the conversation. So when we were talking yesterday, but I'm pointing to the person I was talking to. When we were talking yesterday, there's been some modification in how you show up in the conversation, because how you would normally show up in the conversation makes them defensive. So then what is also the case is that you are also receiving how they are responding as if they are defensive. They may not feel defensive. They might just be responding to you that way. You can't know. And you certainly can't know if you labor it of like, oh, geez, they're being defensive for no reason. Because now you're not listening to how they might be responding in a different way that lands on you as defensive. 99% of my job security is between heady and hearty miscommunications, or at least mislistenings. So the third variable is action, which can also be inaction. So think of it as like the blue screen or the spinning rainbow ball of death. I have to be inclusive, right? So you know exactly what to do or you do not know what to do. So you either do nothing or you are in full action mode before you even know the details. So I am a very high action person. And so if those three variables exist in you, then it's some combination of them. So fundamentally, I'm going to turn these into lamps, just so it's a way of you thinking about them. So a heady lamp would be one of those desk lamps that faces down and illuminates a tiny circle, right? Those people, we all know who those people are. Then the hearty person is the IKEA lamp that you put in a corner and faces up and illuminates the entire room, right? And then action would be like a strobe light. Super fun, but not useful in all cases. Okay? Now, again, you have all three of these variables in you at all times. But your life has taught you usually a combination of two to use. Now, at one point in time, I was going to do a research project specifically on children from divorced families, because I started hearing from my text messages and conversations with audience members that they could like move between all of the different variables depending on what was needed. And there seemed to be a pattern of people who had like multiple holidays in different households, and they have to like adjust the culture of the households because they have different sets of parents they have to navigate. So that was a research trail I went on for a long time. And so I want to make sure that emotional intelligence is a thing, and you could be very good at navigating between the different variables at the different times when you're talking to somebody else based on what it is they need or what it is you need to feel safe and prepared in that setting. You are capable of doing that. But because I like to work at where it's really hard, I want you to think when you are irrationally pissed off. Like that moment where you know you are very much overreacting, right? You know these moments. And if you don't know these moments, just ask someone else in your life. They will point out one, okay? So in that moment of that irrational anger, frustration, challenge, that kind of stuff, I think there's something connected in there to what I refer to as kind of our lizard brain. And the lizard brain is where we feel safe and prepared, even if we're not right. That's the space I like to do research in because I'm weird. Okay. So are we clear on head, heart, and action? There, some of you just got here and you're like, how is she starting? I started early. Welcome to a flexible schedule. Okay. So the top link is jesspettitt.com/survey. You are welcome to take this. And I actually recommend that when you feel yourself getting really challenged or frustrated, specifically with a person that you're about to have to talk to, email, text, engage with, go on a road trip with, possibly a return flight from a conference with, that you take this survey first so you can figure out how's your little lizard brain showing up right now, because you can navigate all of them. Okay, now with that foundation, let's get into some therapy. Some work. Okay. Our life, we make judgments and assumptions to feel safe and prepared. That is a assumption fact that based in my work. So if we are doing that, now we have to figure out what it is, what are the patterns that make us feel safe and prepared so that we can keep them, edit them, or get rid of them. You are in charge of this process for yourself. So yesterday, when some of the questions came up around managerial boundaries, I challenged you to name your managerial boundaries, because if you don't know them, then you don't know what someone else thinks they are and if they are right or wrong. But I want you to notice that your lack of knowledge or lack of accuracy of knowledge around your managerial boundaries might be rooted into how you show up when shit gets hard. So that's why I keep focusing back in these like really aggravating spaces. So I'm not trying to make you aggravated. That would not be a good business model for me. But I'm trying for you to get to the place where you need solution quickly so that you can apply this. Okay, so if there's 3 variables and our life mostly teaches us to use 2 at a time, that means there's 3 avatars. So I want you again to imagine the frustrating people that you work with, live with, or have chosen to marry. And if you're sitting next to them, I wore the flamingos for you, so just keep an eye up here, okay? So first off, we have the head action people. So I have to start with the head action people because you're annoyed at me because I've already been talking too long and you don't know what's going on. So a head action person, if you are not this person, you know this person. But if you don't know this person, it's probably you. So I am a head action person. You have stated at some point in time in your life, if they would just let me do this by myself, it would be fine. It'd be done better. It'd be done faster. I don't have to play with other people. I don't need to mentor anything. I don't have to build community. Shut up and just let me do it. If you've ever said that, you are a head action person. So now let me use this as an example. Let's say that you and I are going to collaborate on something. So I am actually a head action person. So first off, I am mad at you and it's not even your fault because I don't want to play with nobody, right? Just leave me alone. I'm a big leave me alone person. But no, I have to collaborate because, succession planning and like who's going to be treasurer next. Gil wants a break. Right? So, all right. So then you find a head action person. So I'm picking you. So we're going to do a project together. Congratulations. I'm mad at you. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a list of everything that needs to happen, but I'm going to take off the list everything I want to do. So the only thing left on the list is the crap I can dole out. I'm going to lie about the deadline because I don't trust you. And I'm going to have to redo everything you do it anyway because you didn't do it my way. If it works, that's because I redid everything. So I will take full credit for everything. And if it doesn't work, that's your fault. Or the person who made me collaborate in the first place's fault, because I have done no wrong. Do you know these people? If you do not know these people, do you have access to a mirror? So head action people are super annoying. I am very aware of that. And honestly, for some of your teams, the most healing thing you could possibly do is acknowledge that you're annoying. Because they actually think you don't know, largely because you're navigating the space like you don't know. So then all you have to do is be like, am I being annoying again? And they're going to be like, am I allowed to say yes? But here's what's fascinating to me. When I started doing my research around excuse patterns, I decided, because again, I'm a dork, I read archival letters, journals, books, autobiographies, all kinds of work around my 3, at the time at least, favorite social justice heroes. Because I wanted to know, 1, if they were annoying to work with. Spoiler alert, yes. 2, if they ever made excuses for not doing something or dragged their feet. Answer, yes. So if we're talking about a head action person, this is actually Gandhi. Now, I think most of us can think that Gandhi did some good work, right? Gandhi is also a disastrous hot mess. So if you're interested or you ever feel, let me interrupt. Do you ever watch Hoarders? So I watch Hoarders because I feel much better about my housekeeping skills, right? Like I'm a disaster, but you're never going to find my toothbrush under a carcass. That's not going to happen. So like, have I dusted in a decade? No. Did I wash windows? No, I move. So if you need to feel better about yourself, I highly recommend Gandhi's autobiography, Experiments with Truth. Now, somebody is going to text me. Remember the texting number from yesterday, 202-670-4262. Somebody's going to text me who wrote Gandhi's autobiography. I'm going to let that set in because somebody's like, I don't get it. But I just want you to know that if you actually text me that, in all seriousness, a little puppy has learned how to howl because it makes me very happy, because an auto, Latin prefix, self, biography, Experiments with Truth. So Gandhi is a disaster. Huge disaster, but like has a stamp, right? Such an egomaniac that he thought his own hunger strike would overthrow an entire government. And what sucks is it kind of did. Surely it was all his work, all his fault. So if you identify as a head action person, it is possible that you could still do some good things. But here's something you need to know. Gandhi was assassinated. Yeah, that's actually not the punchline. Gandhi was assassinated by his own people, not an enemy. It was an insider who was like, you know what? I've had it. I'm going to do the world some favors. And killing Gandhi is actually a better option, right? Don't be a Gandhi, but be a Gandhi, right? Like that's how I need you to think about this. So if you are a head action person, what is missing is the hearty part. Now, remember, again, hearty is not emotions. Evidently, those are logically acceptable. Still working on that copay. In this case, hearty parts are big ideas. So if you know one of these people, you're trying to manage one of these people, you're married to one of these people, if they're coming up with a lot of excuses, they just need to be told why. Why is this occurring? Now, sometimes you can't tell people why because of what, confidentiality, HIPAA, HR stuff, whatever. You can't always tell people why, but know that that's the missing ingredient. So in studying Gandhi and all of his disastrousness, he eventually discovered a sense of compassion, realizing that his individual work was actually going to impact generations of people he would never meet in his entire life. When he was able to connect in with that sense of compassion, all three variables showed up in a positive way towards the same goal. And that is actually when his work became much more effectual. So if you're one of these people and you're burnt out, the answer is inside, why are you doing what you're doing? If you're supervising or working with or collaborating with one of these people and you're noticing some excuses, the antidote of that is the why. So this morning at the incredibly well-attended business meeting, one of the things that was talked about was the mission and vision of this organization. Ultimately, I speak to membership associations all the time. The common denominator is elevating the profession. And if you do not feel like you are in a position where you are able to elevate the entire profession, you're going to start asking questions about membership to this association. It honestly shouldn't be just about continuing education credits. It's about the benefits behind the iron wall. It's about the community. It's about getting your cup filled up. It's about riding in the elevator or a shuttle or a bus with someone who's brand new to the profession and they're so excited to be here. And you're like, I have to go to this stupid thing. And then you get sat next to a 12-year-old and they're like, this is the best profession in the world. And there's some part of you that's like, when you are in that place, you need to remember why. And even though I'm not one of you, there is a patient, there is a client, there is a person, there is a human that you do tap into and you remember what that interaction was about. And that's why. That's how you can be Gandhi-esque. Just don't get assassinated by your own people. Okay? So that's head action. So now we're going to move to heart action, because the heart action people are like, oh my God, that's so cool for them. Do you think that they remember? Maybe we could make videos we'll put them on the computer. We'll change the whole mission. Oh, I know what we'll do. We're going to string them all together and then make a marketing campaign for people to get into the profession. That is happening on the same bus with the other person who's having a meltdown. You heart action people. There are people at home who are terrified because you are at a conference. Because you're going to come home with some new idea. It totally contradicts the last set of ideas, but you think it's exciting. Heart action people are completely dependent on other humans. They usually are very good at giving gratitude, thank you cards, stickers, lunches, whatever. Meanwhile, the people back here are like, because you have no idea what you just said. The best example I can think of is I was emceeing an award show. The executive director is talking, and I'm backstage with the event planner and like the main person who's doing the event logistics. The event planner is about to go on maternity leave and the logistics person's about to go on vacation. All three of us are back there and we're like counting down the hours till the event is done, because some of y'all don't know this, but the real exciting part is when this is over, because they get to sleep and shower and possibly recover from induced hangovers, because running events is hard. So I'm standing backstage trying to give some support, and the executive director just starts talking about how she has decided that they are going to do a 5K in a month in downtown Chicago to raise money for something. So these two people are like, what just happened? Backstage, they had to like pull permits. They had to do all kinds of social capital stuff, but they did it. They made a stupid 5K in a month. And the executive director forgot about it. Yeah, they actually emailed me to say, do you remember when Gandhi was killed by his own people? Yeah. So usually executive directors, leaders, chairs, presidents, whatever, you usually are this kind of person. And the truth is, you don't know how the hell they let you get in charge. But thank goodness for everybody back here. So you just keep giving them Girl Scout cookies because you are constantly afraid someone's going to find out you should not be in charge. When I did my research, this is Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King did some good stuff, also assassinated. But Martin Luther King had a dream, not a plan. And how karma works is the part that we remember about his dream was part of a speech that was 45 minutes over time. And it's the only part we teach in schools. And anybody being critical of the speech is like, there were no women present. There is an event planner ghost under the bleachers going, yes, there were. They just can't do it because he went over time. You get Martin Luther King to shut up. A heart action person has the ideas and does them without actually knowing some of the specifics. They're usually not limited by like budgets, hiring freezes, gravity, right? If they're not in charge, they are in your marketing team. They come up with great website copy. But like I said at the top, they're responding to the exact same thing that the head action people are. They just do it in a very different way. Martin Luther King had a great ideas, but had no idea how to do them, and certainly couldn't do them by himself because he literally just thought he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and then like found himself eating lunch with the president of the United States. Imagine the level of intimidation, self-imposed imposter syndrome, feeling fraudulent, not to mention just navigating the world as a Black man. Imagine how that impacted his work. He never felt qualified. He never felt good enough. He never felt like he had what it would take. That is because his excuses were coming from his heady part. And his heady part is also why he had a PhD before he was 40. When his work switched from being straight Black Christian men and straight white Christian men being equal to actually being connected to a living wage and economic system, living wage issues impacted significantly more people than just the two groups that fit his own personal agenda. When he expanded his work into an economic system, that is when his work actually became more threatening to systems of oppression. And that's when he predicted his own assassination. He was able to show up in his trifecta and do the most powerful work he could possibly do while being very annoying. You very well may be a heart to action person. I'll help you identify it, is that if by telling you that story, that truth about Martin Luther King, if there's a little part of you that's fluttering like a tree full of little butterflies, you're annoying. And that's you. You are a heart action person. Welcome. If it's not you and you supervise this person, I invite you to give them the system. Why is something happening is like a mission statement, but like, how does it happen? How doesn't it happen? What is actually going on? Being able to explain what you can explain connected to a system is actually going to help someone a lot. The best example I can think of this is like all the different software out there to like log your hours, get paid, especially if you're working remotely. What is happening? Literally, I remember in the 1900s, a student of mine was doing an internship at a company called Netscape. That's a little travel time machine for some of you. And he asked me which logo I liked. And I liked the one that had this clouds on it, or the shooting stars or something like that. And he said, why? And I was like, I actually have no idea. I just think it's pretty. Well, it turned out that the company actually chose that particular logo because most of the people at the table thought it was pretty. All head action people just exploded because pretty is not a reason. Until you think of something that's pretty, you've done things because they were pretty. You just have to be reminded that, like, sunsets happen, right? Like puppies fall down steps. Oh, right? As a head action person, I'm actually not a beast. I just forgot. If you can somehow bridge the communication between those two groups, head action and heart action, I wouldn't have a job. But yesterday ain't gonna wanna. You're gonna have to actually have a conversation with someone that you have already written a story that they're wrong and that this isn't gonna be successful. That's all you have to do is enter that conversation of what if this time it's different. Now, y'all gonna blow up my phone with like, it was different 30 times. It's always the same. I tried. I don't want to do it anymore. Great. Take responsibility for that because you don't want to do it anymore. Do you see how that works? Now, I have engaged in conversations with y'all for almost 12 hours now. 20, some of you slept. So the third group, I think this is important, are the head heart people. Now, as karma would have it, this is who I married. At least an hour ago, was still alive. And it's not my fault if they're not. So a head heart person, if you are thinking, I don't know how she expects me to make such a big decision. Like, does she mean at work or does she mean at home? I mean, I need more information. What was the survey link again? Let me check on that again. I mean, how valid is this survey? I'd like to see this study. You are how I sell books. A head heart person is constantly stuck in spin cycle. So when we're talking about defensiveness, I'm going to predict that this may be somehow related. So I usually refer to this person as Barb. So the head heart person, here's some good things about them, marriage therapy. Number one, if a copy machine were to break down on a federal holiday after midnight, this person knows someone. Okay. But you do not ask this person at the top of lunch, where do you want to go to lunch? Because that's a big choice. And if they were to do it, they will open a file folder, a drawer of all of the takeout menus that are possibly available. And to be generationally inclusive, you weird Yelper people, I go out to dinner with people and people are like, here's the website to the restaurant. Have you heard of the concept of surprise? I don't want, now it's different if someone's picking you up food, right? Like you got to order, that makes sense. But like, this is where we're going. Great. I need the address. I don't want to know anything else. I want to be surprised. Now, part of that is being a Gen Xer, and part of that is being a head action person because I don't want to look at a website because all I'm going to do is be critical of the website and forget I'm supposed to be looking at the food because I'm an asshole. A head heart person, bless you, is stuck in spin cycle. They are seeking information. Now, I will say as a very high action person, one of the things that I have learned from my partner is that they have no regrets. I do not know what that life is like. But because they take so damn long to make a decision, by the time they make a decision, they like their decision. They have weighed out all of the possibilities that could possibly occur and have moved forward with said decision. I leap before I know there's water and have tons of regrets. Example, because I have anxiety issues, when my parents died, I am now 48 years old. I still wake up in the middle of the night. This actually happened last night. I wake up in the middle of the night in a sheer panic because I have no idea what I did with my parents' yearbooks. Number one, it doesn't matter because whatever I did do, I did in 1993. So they're probably decomposing somewhere now, right? I say that because the freedom of no regrets is because they make thoughtful decisions. That's adorable. If they can stay alive, because they're surrounded by people who make very quick decisions, who also, perhaps you have said this because it's going to prove you're one of these folks, actiony folks, you've weighed out all the options, you just do it faster. Okay, well, they weigh out all the options and do it slower and then don't regret things. So some might call that winning. Now, in my social justice research, this is Mother Teresa. I think we can agree Mother Teresa did some good stuff. Yes. Also, as in case there's any conspiracy theories, it is believed she died of natural causes. Stay tuned. Mother Teresa didn't know if it was the will of God to have this much suffering on the planet, or if it was the will of God for her to intervene. No wonder you can't ask her where to go to lunch. That is a very big question. She didn't know. Are any of you Catholic? Some of you are still proud. Okay, good job. I am married to a recovering Catholic, so good to know. So I am definitely not Catholic. I was raised atheist. I think I'm probably more agnostic now. I don't know. But because I say that, that means I'm pretty much agnostic. But those of you that are Catholic, you may have to help people with this. But there's a sainting process. Like, I'm going to paraphrase, but like step one of the sainting process is you have to be Catholic. Have to. Step two, less important. Step two is you have to do like good stuff, miracles, something like that. Step three is see step one. Have to be Catholic. When Mother Teresa died, we believe of natural causes, she was immediately put up for sainthood. And her closest friends were like, well, what day did she die? Like, because she was constantly questioning her own faith. And if she died on an off day, she can't be a saint. But if she died on the other day, oh, you find that annoying? You're probably a head action person and need to check how strict you are with your rules. Because it says in bylaw 8, article 7, number 2, that you have to be Catholic. Right. I have definitely been the article bylaw person in a meeting. Now, I think we can agree that Mother Teresa did good work, and like Gandhi and like Martin Luther King, was also incredibly annoying to work with. She eventually realized she could do something, and that was build a school. So she didn't just build a school, she actually built a school in an area that no one was giving any funding to. They were just letting it die. That's where she built her first school. Now, that doesn't mean her work's not annoying. But it does mean that if you are working with one of these people, you might need to tell them what they can do and what they cannot do. What resources do they have at their fingertips? At a lot of customer service conferences that I have to speak at, the kind of mantra is like customer's always right. But in order for the customer to always be right, the person in the middle, so not the owner, but the middleman, the middle person has to know how much leeway they have to make the customer happy. So you hear all these stories of like hotels or something like this where they know they have a $500 limit. They can do anything with this customer to make this customer happy inside of $500. Truth be told, a lot of people are happy with like a Snickers. But if you haven't told people what resources they have available at their disposal, at their discretion, and they trust you that they actually have the discretion to use those resources at their disposal, then they often won't know what to do. And what they will do is avoid it or send it up the food chain. And that's why some of you are doing other people's work. And probably why you're annoyed by them. Now, I married one of these people. I've explained this because we call it karma. I'm going to challenge y'all because based on my conversations on text, I think this might be a lot of you. No judgment. That's what I'm feeling from the conversations. I had a lot of conversations with people who are taking care of their ailing parents. I've had a lot of conversations who asked me about their children. The sandwich generation thing was like a theme yesterday. So not only should you not ask a childless person parenting advice, but asking someone who has told you their parents are dead is an odd choice. But okay, I'm happy to help. And what that shows me is that you don't really know what to do. So I'm going to guess that some of you around your own parents might be in this head-heart place. So what I'm going to invite you to do is to acknowledge what resources do you actually have at your ready and what don't you? I'm hoping that this story resonates, but my partner is a weird outdoorsman person. Do you know these people who voluntarily go outside and sweat? Yeah. Today's Saturday and he decided to do an ultra marathon tomorrow. That's him. He's weird. Okay, Lauren. So we live in a cliff on the ocean. I'm not allowed to complain, even though we have kind of shitty internet. There's 6 rivers that go off into the bay that then goes off. It's redwoods. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Come visit. You won't because it's a really long drive. But we first moved there 17 years ago and Lauren wanted to buy a kayak. So he goes off into deep kayak research, occasionally giving me kayak updates. Guess what I care about? Anything but a kayak update. So he's doing research on types. There's freshwater, saltwater, open water, skinny water, cold water, hot water. I don't know, 2-seaters. He actually contemplated a 2-seater kayak. And I was like, are you bringing a dog? I'm not getting on a boat. That's not occurring. Number one, I weigh twice as much as you and I understand physics. No. So we narrowed it down to a 1-seater. That took a couple years. So then there's storage, and if it's rope or it's containers, is it on the side? How are you going to carry it? Holy shit, buy a damn kayak. Finally, I'm not even exaggerating. It's like 6 years. There was a binder of kayaks, not of women, but of kayaks, that every time I would come home, we'd have to go through and get a kayak update until finally he did not realize how homicidal I had become. I literally was like, get in the car. There is one store in town, because I live with 3 people, one store in town that sells kayaks. I will pay for it. Get in the car. Buy your stupid kayak. So we went, and then because how karma works, the one shop had his favorite ideal candidate of a kayak. It was also red, his favorite color. It was also used. He's an environmentalist, so he didn't buy a new plastic thing. He bought an old plastic thing that is leaning against the door, and it was on sale. So I can't even explain to him how annoying it is because it's magic. Look what happened. Now, the only thing that makes this story doable is that he actively kayaks. Because of where we live, again, I know you're going to be like, look it up, Eureka, California. He can kayak to work. We had to buy a house more than 10 miles away from the university so that riding his bike would be worth it. I am an avid indoorsman. I do not understand any of these things, but he does kayak. He did get his dream kayak, and he knows it's his dream kayak because he did way more research than anyone in the entire universe would ever want to do. But that binder of kayaks, where for me, it was kindling, for him, it was exactly the resources he knew what to do with. He could make choices. Kayaking in freshwater versus the bay versus the ocean versus I don't know where the hell else you kayak, whatever, water situations, those really matter to him. I, as an action person, let's pretend I did anything that made me sweat. I would have been kayaking for 6 years on a kayak that didn't fit or that wasn't the right one or the place or whatever. I wouldn't feel as good about it and I'd have regrets. Probably would sell it, buy a new one, sell it, buy a new one, sell it, buy a new one, which is how capitalism works. You're welcome. But that's not how these people work. Mother Teresa had to find out what she could do. So I'm going to challenge you, because I don't know who you are, but whoever I've been talking to about your own kids and your own parents and being kids with your parents and being parents to your parents who have become kids. There is a possibility you have gathered enough information about your kayak. It's possible that you have gathered enough information. Go buy your kayak. If I can tell you anything, that is that if you honestly believe that you do not have enough information about what to do with your own children or your own parents, there is going to be a time where you're going to realize it's too late because you can't even do a semi-good job anymore. Right now, you can do a semi-good job. Please remember that my bar was to do the best you can with what you've got some of the time. Probably the most powerful story that I think I can share, if it's helpful, was when I became my brother's keeper. I have been his big sister all along, but I wasn't paying attention. I started going to conferences about siblings. I started going to Al-Anon meetings. Our parents did not drink or do drugs, but they were open to people about families and sibling roles. I started going to conferences to learn how to be a sister. I was going to do this. I was going to do it right. I was gathering information. I was trying to figure out how to be a sister. Now, remember, I'm a head action person. One day, totally on a whim, my brother's name is Jonathan. I think I've said that, but Jonathan eventually said, why don't you just call me back? Don't worry about the books and the conference. You've actually been my sister this whole time that you've been studying how to be my sister. My sister is a neurotic studier who is not available. Now, what's ironic is that was 25 years ago. And now here I am, desperate to be his sister. And I don't think I'm too late. But that's my commitment to buy my kayak. I was more prepared for his death than his absence. And I changed what I expected from our interactions so that we could have the interactions, because the interactions are what was important. The idea of this second session was to do a deeper application. To do a deeper application to the people you supervise, the people you work with, the people who supervise you, the people you care for, the people you care for, the people you care for. That's all you have to do. Figure out when times get going really hard, you're going to lean back to your lizard brain and do what you need to do so you feel safe and you feel prepared. If you are making excuses from whatever your third place is, you are likely making excuses because you don't think you know what you have to work with. If you could just say, thank you very much. I hear you. This is what I have to work with. This is what's going on. This is how I'm retreating back to lizard brain so that you can then in turn make yourself feel safe and prepared. If you can make yourself feel safe and prepared, it is then that you can acknowledge what it is you need to change, edit, keep, trash. But you can't do that if you don't feel safe and prepared to begin with. Based on the conversations that I've had, my guess is that you are in situations where you do not always feel safe and prepared. And you are looking outside of you to feel safe and prepared in those situations. And that has brought you to this point. You are welcome to keep doing that. I mean, I have a mortgage to pay. But all you got to do is stop doing that and realize that it's not always about you feeling safe and prepared. And even if you did feel safe and prepared, it actually wouldn't mean you're right. I had a great texting conversation with someone about my helicopter Jewish lesbian parents in the pantry calling me about Zach. What really matters with the people in your life You winning and being right, or the relationship with them? And I see some of you nodding, and that kind of like warms my little heart a little bit. I do actually have one. It's deep, but it's in there. But I'm going to challenge you because I don't believe you'll do it either. Maybe occasionally, maybe with the people you work with. For some reason, we give our best stuff at work. If we have learned anything from COVID, it is that those boundaries have blurred. And I do not know how anybody is going to put them back. I didn't wear shoes for 2 years. I mean, not to mention like undergarments, like you paid for these, you're welcome. If we basically went feral on top of whatever feralness we had when we entered the surprise of COVID, why don't you just sit with yourself? Do the best you can with what you've got, because that is what you've got. And if you can do it some of the time, that's better than nothing never. Now, I'm going to invite you to keep the texts coming. I'm not complaining about them. As Julia said, I am going to do a webinar to kick off the new year at the end of January. What are we going to talk about? I don't know. It depends on what we keep talking about. That webinar is for you, if you're a member, because it's behind the iron wall. Renew your dues today. Between now and January 31st, can you give yourself a break? Can you allow yourself to be good enough now? Most of you will say no. And that's fine. I have a mortgage to pay. But the invitation is out there. Be good enough now is doing the best you can with what you've got some of the time in all the facets of your life. It has been an honor to be here. Here is your extra time back because the coffee's probably still next door. Thank you.